So now, do you teach full time or?
I run a program here called the Institute for Diversity in the Arts, and I teach just because I can. So it's pretty cool.
Nice,
I'm
nice.
not required to teach, but I like teaching. I love teaching actually. So I get to do some classes.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah.
Um, so one of the things that struck me about this book is that, it's published in the traditional way. You have a, major publisher publishing it. But the book, for this kind of book to be successful, because we have these scandals or, quagmires or protests or whatever you want to call them, it seems like every single moment that you turn around, for your book to be successful, it has to be pretty up to date, right?
Right.
So did you have to write really quickly, or tell me about the process
It's
of
a
writing this?
That's actually a great question. I mean, I'm not the fastest hare on the track. My first book, Can't Stop, Won't Stop, it took a lifetime to write, but from the time that the book got signed to the time it came out was 4 years. And the time that it took to get Who We Be, my third book really out, um, the middle book was an anthology, but the time that it took to get Who We Be done took like 8 years. Um, and so what happened was I had basically put together an essay that I wanted to serve as an introduction for the paperback edition of Who We Be. And that was going to be something that basically caught people up from the end of Who We Be to everything that had happened after that. The book came out literally 2 months before the non-indictment of Darren Wilson and Ferguson. And so in the middle of the tour, literally the whole context for the book shifted. Um, and so I went to Ferguson last summer, spent some time out there, and turned in what came up to be a 50-page piece. And I think they just said, well, that's a little too long, Jeff. I don't think we can have this be an introduction to the paperback edition. But this is a new book, so why don't you start working on that? And I thought it was a good idea. The catch is, of course, Jeff, that we need you to do this in about 3 months. So I ended up writing a book from scratch in about 3.5, 4 months after I had taken something like 12 years for the first two complete books to be completed. So it was fast, and it was the type of thing where things were changing even between the writing of it and now the imminent release of it, and there are things that may feel dated even in that regard.
Yeah.
So it's
No,
yeah, it's sort of the risk that one takes, I suppose. But
yeah.
the topics are so big actually that it feels like um, there's still a place for it in this media environment of hot
Yeah.
takes and immediate sort of edit op-eds and turnaround time of like 5 hours for pieces to get out there.
Right.
Felt like there was some room to still do something that might be a little bit of a deeper dive. So
Yeah. No, it feels up to date. Another striking thing about the book is that, there are a number of people who have studied the same sort of phenomena that you are analyzing here, and there's some hope in your book. You seem to have some hope, and some other people who have studied the same things don't. And so I'm just wondering what gives you hope.
I think what gives me hope is the knowledge that uh, this has been going on for decades, for centuries, and people have always figured out a way to push things forward and make changes. Um, I'm really inspired by the young folks I get to be surrounded by every day, working on a college campus as well as being involved in the community with a lot of young people. Um, and frankly, they give me hope. My kids give me hope. My kids are now high school and college age, and then their friends and peers, and the folks whom they reach who are younger than them as well. because they both interact with a lot of younger people too. They all sort of embody the spirit of overcoming, and I think that I owe it to them to be able to say, yes, this is what the history has been, and no, don't take it for granted that people, figure things out. And even more than that, my message, I feel like, has to be that change can come. I've seen change happen in my lifetime. Not all for the better, but certainly some for the better. And,
Right.
and that keeps me going. You gotta wake up in the morning, right? So that's where I'm at. That's where I come from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you write about Ferguson in the book, as you said you went there. There have been more Ferguson-like moments, these sort of extended news stories than you obviously are able to cover in this book. I mean, as you said, you had to write it pretty quickly, but tell me a little bit about the calculus of sort of what, which of these moments made it worthy for inclusion in the book, and how you decided to leave other stories out.
Oh, Ferguson to me is it's in some ways the epitome, right? The apotheosis of a lot of things that have happened in American society that have been bad. Ferguson is the apotheosis of resegregation, and at the same time, it's been the spark that's, I think, helped to light the fire that we see now for change, and for justice, and for Black lives, and for, I think, a broad societal change that we're really going to need moving deeper into this particular century. So I felt like I was really needing to go to Ferguson, and the thing that I learned there is that it's a movement that's deeply suffused with spirituality. Also, there's a very broad understanding amongst folks on the ground there that what they're doing is historic. One of the common things that people said was Ferguson's everywhere. Mm-hmm. And so that had to go into this.
So rather than covering every situation like Ferguson can kind of stand in for these other issues, right? I mean, because you can't cover every single one.
Yeah, I think so. I think you can't cover everything, but I also think that historically, we'll remember that this moment, was like Montgomery, right? And that it spreads to Birmingham, Selma, and that kind of thing. I think that we're going to remember this moment as having begun in Ferguson, and then Baltimore, and then Oakland, and then Milwaukee, Baton Rouge,
Chicago,
Boston, Chicago, absolutely, yeah,
for sure. And so, you do sort of encourage your reader in the book to get involved. What is the best way for someone who wants to get involved but may not have been involved in this kind of political activity before? Are there tips for getting involved, do you think?
Yeah, it happens on all these multiple levels at once, right? So I think that the one thing that I'm trying to make a point about from the very first sentence all the way on through the book is that we're in this cycle of crisis, and that history feels like it's repeating itself, if not rhyming, right? Because we come up to the precipice of these moments, there's an explosion, and then we enter into this cycle in which we don't absorb the lessons of what happened. If we go back to 1965, it resulted in a national consensus for change, for the sort of groundswell that led to the passage of the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Immigration and Nationality Act, but it also transformed people on a very deeply personal type of a basis, to where people looked at their lives differently, people looked at their communities differently, people looked at interacting with each other differently. And so when I say that it needs to take place at all these different types of levels, it begins here in a lot of respects, and it spreads out very quickly. And I think that people just need to begin where they need to begin, right where they are, you know, in their workplaces, in their schools, in their neighborhoods, in their churches, in the institutions that they belong to and move through, and that we need to be able to make this something that then leads to another kind of groundswell that helps to kind of defeat the folks who are hate mongering and fear mongering, and moves us in the direction of not only a change in policy, but a change ultimately in the culture that moves us in a better direction.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Are you doing events for the book?
I am. I just posted them on my website. It's going to be something like 20 events, I think, between now and then. But a bunch of amazing conversations. People like Anna Holmes and Nicole Hannah-Jones, and Rebecca Solnit, and Kat Brooks, and Jose Antonio Vargas, Jonathan Capehart, a bunch of folks I'm really looking forward to meeting and having great conversations with.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Alrighty, well, congrats on this, and good luck with the book.
Thank you. Take care of yourself. Have a great afternoon.
Okay, have a good day.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.